The military drones sometimes are equipped with Hellfire missiles. I mean, somebody could have taken him out, it seems like.
If they ever lie to us, they're done. They're of no use to us.
There's so many reasons why this guy should not be doing this. Hello and welcome to Best Case, Worst Case. This is your host, Jim Clemente, former New York City prosecutor, retired FBI profiler, and writer-producer on CBS's Criminal Minds. And with me today is my lovely co-host.
Hi, everybody. It's Francie Hakes. Hi, Jim.
How are you?
I'm really good, Jim. Excited to be back in the studio with you and talking to one of our favorite guests.
Well, our most outrageous and dangerous guest.
That's going to be me, Carson Ulrich. I'm a special agent with the Drug Enforcement Administration.
Well, it's great to have you again, Carson. And I hope that the case that you tell us about today is not quite as dangerous as the last one, because I can't imagine you going into the jungle and going after 7 assassins and not really having a plan and having to do most of it yourself. And it must have been crazy. And that was your first big case, right?
That was my first enforcement operation, my first mission I ever did.
Wow.
Well, I'm not sure I can live through another one of those cases, Carson.
But we are really interested in finding out what your next case is going to be about. So tell us, where were you in your career? What were you doing at the time this case came in?
For this case, I was a team leader on a program called FAST. FAST stands for the Foreign Deployed Advisory and Support Team. I actually think DEA liked the acronym FAST and then came up with the words to fill it in. But
so government.
Very, very much so. It was a very serious initiative.
Foreign Deployed, what was it?
It is the Foreign Deployed Advisory and Support Team, FAST.
Interesting.
FDAS just doesn't have the same panache.
D missing somehow. But, thank you for telling us that, because we never would have figured that out. Okay, so you were assigned to the FAST team. And so when was this in your career?
The mission occurred in 2008. It was my second tour in Afghanistan.
Oh, wow.
Oh, dear. I sense this is going to be dangerous again. So tell us a little bit, Carson, before you tell us about this mission or case. What does FAST do? What's the point of it?
FAST is what DEA would have or consider a tier 1 element. It runs a selection course where any agent can raise their hand and volunteer and go to a tryout that has about an 80% attrition or failure rate. It is sponsored by the Special Operations Command, U.S. military, and we are designed to work in austere environments shoulder to shoulder with U.S. as well as foreign military special operation forces.
And Carson, you said tier 1 operators. I have to admit, what I know about that is mostly from television. I happen to be a fan of a particular TV series right now called SEAL Team, and they talk a lot about tier 1 operators. So can you tell our listeners what a tier 1 operator is? Certainly.
A real tier 1 operator is going to be what we would call the task force. Us and FAST, I'm not going to compare us to that. That's going to be like Delta or SEAL Team 6. There's different color acronyms that are attached for each of these units. They are what we would call the supported unit. They are the one unit in country. And you have even FBI units, the HRT, that would work alongside them in site exploitation missions.
Whoa. Site exploitation missions. Could you tell us what that means?
It's very mysterious.
Yeah, of course. So the task force, be it whatever color it was that was in country at the time, would conduct almost nightly missions. And when they're on the ground, they want to collect as much intelligence and information and evidence as possible. And criminal investigators are better at that than anyone. So FBI special agents from the hostage rescue team that are highly trained, highly equipped, and able to go on missions like this, we're there to support with that role.
Okay. I don't think you actually answered the question about what is site exploitation, though?
Okay. Site exploitation is what we would do is collect evidence. You're going to gather any type of electronic devices, any papers, interview people, take biometrics, gather as much evidence as possible so that you can exploit what you've collected from the site.
Now, Carson, are these kinds of operations, task forces, are they to investigate terrorist activity? Is it part of war? Is it military members suspected of committing crimes? What exactly is the point?
Well, a task force is a military direct action unit. And one of the things that we made it clear in the psyche of DEA special agents is that we're not trying to make SEALs. We have SEALs. We are criminal investigators. And we embrace that. And we bring that mentality to the battlefield. The way we interact with what they would call human intelligence or sources, that's what we do for a living. We have a tremendous amount of experience in doing that.
Okay. Well, you started this off by saying this is your second deployment.
Yes, I did 3 tours in Afghanistan.
I think, one of the most interesting things about what we're doing here, Jim, and why it's so great to talk to someone like Carson is because I'm not sure the public really knows the kind of danger that federal agents are putting themselves in when this country is on a war footing, the way we've been for the last 15 years, so since 9/11, really. Right. I think everyone understands that soldiers are going overseas and going to war, but I don't think the public really understands that federal agents who, while like Carson may be highly trained, didn't necessarily sign up to go to war and to be deployed in a war zone.
Right. And the other thing is that most of the people that are running around in those war zones are 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. And you talk about austere environments. It's a little easier for younger people to adapt to that. When you're a little bit more mature,
Seasoned,
it's kind of tough.
seasoned.
It's kind of tough, isn't it, Carson?
Yeah, Father Time is undefeated.
All right. So tell us about how this case came to you while you were on this deployment to Afghanistan.
I was the team leader, and I had personnel established at a number of different bases, military bases within the country. And one of those bases was Jalalabad, which is in eastern Afghanistan near, it's not really close to the border of Pakistan, but it's one of our premier bases between operating the war zone and the border with Pakistan, which was a refuge for Taliban. Pakistan was.
So it doesn't sound like a particularly safe neighborhood.
No, it's the Achin district that surrounds Jalalabad, and it is a haven of terrorist activity.
Okay. And so what did you first hear? How did you get this mission? What's going on at this time that you get pulled into this?
So at the time, the DEA the FAST team had cultivated 35 sources. That's 35 snitches or human sources of information that were collecting and providing active information in the Achin district around Jalalabad. That is a lot of sources for two guys to operate with.
Well, and Carson, why are you cultivating sources in Jalalabad?
Well, as a criminal investigator, you collect. You collect information, you collect evidence, you intercept. And human sources provide a view of the landscape, as well as can provide some type of operations that we can act upon, provide the intelligence necessary to plan and execute a mission.
Okay, so you're in Jalalabad. You've cultivated a bunch of sources to look for criminal activity or investigate criminal activity. What happens next?
About 30% of what we collect is what we would consider just strictly drug-related information. The other vast majority of the information we're collecting is terror-related because it's Afghanistan. So it could be the movement of IED materials, suicide vests, a variety of munitions, or planned attacks. So we are providing this information directly to the Fusion Center in Jalalabad, which is a collection of the intelligence representatives, mostly military, in Jalalabad.
So you have a whole bunch of things that are sort of outside of your specific mission, like 70% of what you're getting has to do with the war on terror.
That's correct. And one of the things where the DEA, as an alphabet agency, where we're involved, we don't necessarily attribute a classification that's not necessary to the information. We disseminate, and we disseminate real time, meaning if we have a source in our safe house, we are writing down notes and we are ferrying them to the Fusion Center while the interview is occurring with such real time that often we're getting questions, and we can even ask this source these questions during the interview process.
Wow, that's I've worked in situations where similar, but where the action was removed by 10,000 miles and a year or two. So there's no real time back and forth. So this seems like it's pretty intense if you guys are ferrying information back and forth and developing information right there in the battlefield.
Well, and obviously it's a security measure, right, to be ferrying this information physically rather than electronically.
Yes, but it's basically just a short drive across the airfield to the base, and we can just bring these notes. It was more of a matter of lives are at risk, and we're uncovering information, and we want to get the information that isn't strictly drug-related, that's terror-related, or COIN, counterinsurgency, we call it information. Get it to the other people that need it and act upon it.
So you started this FAST mission, and who was on your team? What was your operation looking like?
We have 8 personnel as far as special agents, an intelligence analyst, and a team leader, which was myself. We separate them out in different areas of the country, and they begin to collect information, as in the case in Jalalabad, where they're interviewing many, many sources. We share all the intelligence that we collect, and then we conduct direct action missions pursuant to the evidence or information that we also gather.
Okay, so are you about to tell us about one of those direct action missions?
I am. There was a target whose name was Maftoon, who was on the JPEL list. The JPEL list is the Joint Priority Effects List. It's a kill list. It's the highest priority targets in the country that are being tracked by the military, the U.S. and coalition forces.
And why was this particular guy on the, quote, kill list?
He was actually nominated for the JPEL list by the DEA. He was a target of investigation because his primary role in the Taliban was drug trafficking. He was a large drug smuggler. But these people have collateral duties. They multitask. So he wasn't limited to this drug trafficking. He was bringing in anti-tank mines, suicide vests, and he was housing candidates for suicide missions, VBEDs, vehicle-borne IEDs, as well as human IED, where they would set themselves off with either improvised explosives or suicide vests.
So the drugs, were they being used by the insurgents or were they being sold by them?
They're being sold. They control the hashish and the opium markets, most of which is transported in the form of heroin to Europe. But it's a tremendous amount of heroin, and it's very profitable. And the insurgency needs it to survive. It's a funding mechanism.
So, Carson, it occurs to me that this is similar to your last mission that you talked to us about, specifically where the DEA mission in Bolivia is to interdict or stop drugs from coming in the United States. You're talking about another drug, not cocaine, but a very serious drug, heroin, and stopping it as it goes into the West, right?
Yes. Afghanistan produces a phenomenal, huge percentage of the world's heroin. And just like the Taliban and opium or the FARC in cocaine, or blood diamonds, or Al-Shabaab and the ivory trade. Insurgencies that have an illicit funding source have around a 7 times greater longevity. The FARC's been around for almost 40 plus 50 years because they learned that trafficking cocaine was very profitable, and you need money to fight these wars.
So how much money are we talking about in hashish and heroin?
Billions upon billions of money, dollars.
Really?
Yes.
And have terrorists and the Taliban always controlled the poppy fields in Afghanistan? Is that an historic control?
Before the invasion of Afghanistan, when the Taliban was in power, they prohibited the cultivation of opium with the death penalty. They would kill you if you grew opium or you were caught. So you could not it wasn't safe to be a drug dealer in Afghanistan before the U.S. invasion. Once they became an insurgency and they are fighting for their survival, they turned 180 degrees and they forced the farmers to grow opium. And the U.S. military is not a drug enforcement agency, and they didn't have the mechanism set up to do these type of operations. And the opium trade expanded by some 500% in the first some 18 months.
Wow.
Great. That's a consequence I'm sure no one thought of when we invaded.
Right.
But seriously, it sounds to me like you have a reason to put him on the kill list. So what happens?
Well, we nominate him to the military, and they put him on their list. And as a result, the task force tracks and executes a number of missions to try and capture or kill him, none of which succeed.
This guy, the reason, obviously, ultimately, that you nominate him for this list is because not only is he a drug smuggler, but he is using the proceeds, presumably, to buy some of the things with the goal of killing Americans.
That is correct.
So what do you guys do?
Well, we cultivate a source that's a relative of his who owns a car, but he had sold the car. Maftoon had gone to the source and said, hey, I'm aware that you own a car. I need to be picked up and moved from Pakistan back into Afghanistan, and it needs to be done in a covert or clandestine manner. Will you basically be my chauffeur, is what he was asking of the source.
It doesn't sound like it's probably a voluntary position, but okay.
No. Maftoon wields a phenomenal amount of power, and at his word could have had the source killed, even though he was a relative of the source.
But you said he sold his car. How's he going to do this without a car?
That's what he came to us for. Can you give me a car? I'm in a position where I can drive Maftoon around. But he told us on an evening when the task force executed a mission. And the task force doesn't execute direct action, landing on the X missions. They offset.
Wait, Carson. Jim and I are looking at each other like, you just spoke a foreign language. Offset, mission, target. I have no idea what you're talking about.
All right, let's try to do this in English.
Sure. Landing on the X means you are going to land the helicopters right on the objective, either in the compound or in a courtyard right next to it. And that just doesn't happen. There is another story, very interesting, of the first joint mission we did with the military where we went after a target and landed on the X, and it was a bloodbath. But on this mission, the task force offsets, meaning about 7 kilometers away from the objective, they insert the ground team. They have to move on foot, and to conduct the mission, they have to walk to the target and then hit it.
Okay.
So that's about 4 miles for those of us in the U.S.
Right. And when they got on target, they were supported by aircraft. In this case, it was Spectre, a gunship, an AC-130. It engaged a number of the targets on the ground as well.
Okay. And so supported and engaged. By that, you mean there's a jet flying around with a lot of armaments on it, and it's blowing people up and shooting people in places on the ground.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
Carson is always so casual about the whole weaponry and firefights, Carson.
Yes,
it's just shocking.
Yeah.
Well, they're terms. Like there's one term that we use, or the military uses, kinetic. So they say we're going to go kinetic on this target, which means they're going to drop a bomb on it.
Why don't they just say we're going to drop a bomb on him?
Not as cool.
I don't know. There's a whole new lingo. It's funny. It's funny how they talk.
Okay. Yeah, it's not funny if you're underneath the bomb. But
Probably not.
other than that, yeah. Okay, so you're now in a situation where this team is coming in off the X, 7 kilometers. They're going to hit this target. What's the target?
The target is Maftoon. And how we find out about it is our source comes in and wakes us up in the middle of the night. And he says, they tried to hit Maftoon. They missed him, but he was injured in a splash damage impact from the aircraft, meaning these rounds are impacting and the debris or fragmentations of the rounds hit his leg and injured him. And he is on a mule train right now on his way. It takes quite a while for the mule train to get into Pakistan, but he's in the mountains on a mule right now. That's what he told us.
So you say mule train, that's not a military term. You literally mean the animal.
Yeah, like 12 mules with equipment and Taliban fighters is what was reported to us by our source.
So his driving gig is not going to work anymore, right?
Actually, this is the genesis. This is how we came up with the driving gig idea. It's this evening when he tells us that Maftoon had come to him about using his car. So when he's telling us that Maftoon's injured, that the task force tried to kill him, he escaped, he's on a mule train, he's going to Pakistan. It's during this meeting that he says, hey, look, he wants me to drive him around. I might be in a position to be able to do that.
Okay, so what do? You get a car?
Well, first we launch our own UAV, our own drone, which is a very sophisticated line of sight drone, and we send it out to find the mule train. At the same time, we go to the fusion center and wake them up and tell them, look, the task force actually is returning. We can see the helicopters arriving on the airfield. The operators are getting off, and all of the intelligence support personnel for that mission are awake, and the whole fusion center is alive. So I go inside and I say, listen, guys, I think you just tried to hit Moftun. And they're like, well, that's like a secret.
Yeah, not so much.
Not to Carson Ulrich.
Well, honestly, we want to help you. And we had credibility with them. So they're like, what's he got to say? So I pull up the feed to our UAV is currently eyes on the mule train. And so I tell them the story about our source. And I pull up the mule train. I say, your target is on this mule train right here. And they're trying to determine what they can do. It did not meet their thresholds. If they had got a handset intercept or one other piece of information, they would have dropped bombs on that mule train. But they did not. They were in a position where, do we act on this? Do we not act on it? And I was able to pull right up on their screens, GPS location. There's your target. He's on one of these mules. But you do with it as you wish. We're simply giving you the information.
It seems, Carson, that maybe I watch too much TV, but if you've got a drone, at least if it's a military drone, I realize you said it's a DEA drone, but the military drones sometimes are equipped with Hellfire missiles. I mean, somebody could have taken them out, it seems like.
Oh, yeah. They had the capability of launching. They could have launched fast movers. They could have launched jets and just took them out. It just happened to be that we got the intel first. We launched our own drone, which is not armed. And while that drone is flying there, I am walking over to provide a feed just to pass the information to the military. But yes, if they had agreed that if it had met their threshold of acting, they would have simply launched a couple of jets and dropped bombs on it.
Right. So what you're saying is basically they want corroboration. And
yes,
there was no way to get that at this point. Although it would have been nice, I guess, if you could fly that drone a little close and actually see that one of the guys has his leg bandaged up. That might be internal corroboration.
It is, but these gentlemen wear man jams or robes. Their clothing is very flowing, very bulk. It's hard. It would be hard to do that. Here's the difference, Jimmy. What you're talking about corroboration in law enforcement, as you know, a source has to be credible to the point of surviving court or judicial proceedings.
Right.
They can't lie. In fact, we try and trip them up. We enforce the credibility on our sources, meaning if they ever lie to us, they're done. They're of no use to us. We can't impeach our own witnesses. The military and the other intelligence agencies, they have a different relationship. They collect. And even if a source is lying to them or they're not able to corroborate or prove it, they don't spend the same amount of measures. So when our source says something, because of the level of corroboration we have and the confidence in our source itself, it holds a greater weight than it does in the military communities.
Got it.
Interesting. So your man Moftun is fleeing to Pakistan on a mule. You've got his GPS location on your drone. You've told the military, who apparently aren't going to take whatever action they could or might in other circumstances. So what do you all do?
Well, I go back and I go to sleep because it's not my job to influence. I just simply passed on and disseminated the information we had. But as a validation to that, another alphabet agency came like 4 days later and did a brief. And they had a whole timeline and they tracked and they showed basically how Moftun was injured. They heard he was injured via radio traffic and he went out of Pakistan on a mule train. And the commander of the task force, stood up in the meeting and goes, I really don't need to hear 4 days later what the DEA gave me real time. I just didn't have enough to act on it, which was a validation for the information that we were providing.
Yeah, but it's also a perfect opportunity, instead of throwing your weight around and being a dick, to say, okay, let's figure out a way to get that real time and work together so that we don't have this problem.
Yeah, and there is a lot of grappling and trying to cross over and work alongside some of these agencies when all you're doing is providing information.
Right.
And so I went to the task force and I said, hey, look, we have a source that is in a position to be the taxi driver for this target. How many missions have you launched on this guy? 7.
Wow.
He's still alive. We can get him in a vehicle when we know exactly where he is, take him to the terrain of our choosing, and execute whatever mission we want.
But isn't that driver going to be kind of at risk in that situation?
Right. We would obviously not want them to go kinetic. We would not want them to drop a bomb. We had a whole plan in motion. I'll get to that point, what we're going to do, how we're going to execute. But I asked them for a vehicle. I said, just give us a car and we'll handle the rest. We didn't have a car. And I didn't want to spend the funds to buy a car in Afghanistan. And the guy goes, oh, we don't have the money for that. I said, it costs you more to just turn those helicopters on. Not lift them up, not fly them away, just to turn them on. Costs more than what this car is going to cost. And the guy took a little bit of offense and he's like, nah, we're going to pass. This is the task force. Now, this is a very elite, in some ways, very arrogant way of thinking, if you will.
Well, I was picking that up when the guy stood up during the briefing and said, I don't need to hear that because the DA told me 4 days ago.
But it sounds to me like the guy's engaged now in a little CYA. He's kind of an egg on his face because he didn't take the opportunity. So now he's going to refuse to take the opportunity to get somebody who's on their kill list. That's bizarre.
It is. There's a lot of ego and there's some arrogance involved there, but that's neither here nor there. Our relationship as a fast team was with what we call white side soft, not tier 1, but tier 2. SEAL teams and special forces A teams. They are highly elite direct action units, but they're not the supported unit. They're not the task force, not the tier 1. They're the tier 2 guys. And that's who we lived and operated with.
Okay. So did you decide to approach someone different about your intel?
We did. We went to the ODB. ODA stands for Operational Detachment Alpha, and it is an A team of special forces led by a captain. The ODB is led by a major, and it oversees, it's like the admin or the logistical, the larger fatherly aspect of the ODA. We lived with the ODB and operated with them. We went to them, and they almost put our eyes out, throwing a set of car keys at us. They go, hey, here's your keys, here's your car.
See, there's a group that understands what they have and doesn't have that kind of ego about it.
Right. So we painted the vehicle with IR paint, put a number on it, put a SAT tracker, a cell tracker.
Wait.
Okay.
What is IR paint?
It's infrared.
Yep, Jim's right. It's infrared paint.
Okay.
It will glow at night if we look at it under nods.
Yeah, you're still doing that.
Carson, you're still not speaking English. It glows when you're looking at it under what?
Under night observation devices, night vision goggles.
Nods.
So if you're looking at the IRs at night and you put an IR light on it, like it's a light that's invisible to the naked eye, but you can see under night vision, then it will glow. And so you're able to discern and find this car at night, and it will stand out amongst other vehicles. In addition to that, we put a sat phone tracker, a satellite tracker, and a sat phone kill switch on the vehicle. So we could track it with redundant measures as well as turn the vehicle off when we wanted to. It's basically a trap.
Carson, I can't help being, a criminal prosecutor here and ask you about what I would want if this were a criminal case. And so I'm wondering whether any of the same rules apply. For example, do you wire up the car? Is there any reason you want to try to get video or sound of what's happening inside? Or is it only important to you that you know where it is?
No, we do have the car wired for sound and video, but that's not as important to us, as we don't believe if we ever introduce ourselves to Moftun and he's in his vehicle that he is likely going to survive, because we had high confidence that he always wore a suicide vest and he would probably detonate himself before he would be captured.
Wow.
So you didn't expect there was any way you were going to get any intelligence or do what DEA agents the world over do and flip him to get higher ups in the organization? You didn't think that would ever happen? All
those mechanisms and opportunities are set in place in the eventuality that he doesn't have the courage to do it. But we simply wire it for sound and for video as a what if measure. But we did not, if you're asking us, if we find him, is he going to survive the outcome? We don't believe he is, but we are going to attempt to arrest him and capture him as a law enforcement officer, because we work with Afghan police officers. And so that was our role, but we're operating in conjunction and parallel to the military, that we knew full well if they found out where the car was and Moftun was in it, they would just drop a bomb on it. And our source also knew that. He's like, please don't let them drop a bomb on me. I go, no, we won't. No, we won't do that. You'll be fine.
I can understand his motivations.
Yeah, I can understand that. He's trying to help you out.
Yeah, we don't want to kill him. And so we have an obligation to his safety.
So now you have this radioactive car, basically, that glows in the dark, kind of literally in a sense.
Right.
And what do you all do with all that?
It takes us a while to get this into place. We have to set the paperwork up because the car is going to be investigated by the Taliban. So we have a fake bill of sale and we have a fake insurance, and as well as the transfer of the vehicle and the insurance and all the records and registering the vehicle in Jalalabad is all done false to our source. The source now owns this car. It was like a little Nissan vehicle. I don't know what kind of model it was because it was in a foreign area. It's a Nissan model that's not offered in the United States. And in a garage in a special forces camp. And we wire it, get it all ready, and turn it over to our source, and then do all the fraudulent or clandestine transfer documents so that it will survive a very thorough investigation by the Taliban.
All right. How long does that take, just out of curiosity?
About a week.
That still seems pretty fast.
And you backdated it so that it would have been when this guy supposedly got his first car?
No. We the source told Moftun, it's always, when you're lying and you're creating this narrative, it's always better to use as much truth as possible. So he told Moftun, I don't have a car, I'll go get one. But if I'm going to buy a car, you better make it worth my while. And so he went and purchased the car according to the dates of the documents that we gave him the car and did the paperwork.
Okay.
And at this point, we learned that Moftun is going to return to Afghanistan and he's going to be carrying anti-tank mines. There's a huge destruction. These are mines that will destroy a tank. And he's going to set them up in Achin, in Jalalabad area. That's his plan. And he wants our source to drive and get him to bring him and these landmines back into Afghanistan.
Wow.
Oh my God. So that car is probably loaded with landmines and possibly a suicide vest on the bad guy himself. It seems to me then that if there's a firefight or something happens and he triggers that vest, a lot of people could be at risk.
Yeah. And these are not smooth roads and highways that he's going to be driving on, right?
No. This is desert. Very rough mountainous roads in the desert.
I would not want to take that job. I mean, there's so many reasons why this guy should not be doing this.
No. That's what makes a good DE agent, is you influence people to do things that are not really productive towards their own survival. You find what motivates them and you influence them to assist you and it's not always easy.
This is an amazing story, and I'm sure it's going to get even crazier because it's setting up to sound like there's some really bad stuff about to go down. So we can't wait to have you back and actually hear the conclusion of this nail-biting episode of Carson Ulrich Overseas.
So thanks for being on, Carson.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
All right, we'll talk to you again soon. And for now, signing off on Best Case, Worst Case. Till next time.
Best Case, Worst Case is an XG production. Produced by Jim Clementi at Empire Studios, LA. Engineered and edited by Mike Thal. Music composed and performed by Simba Sumba. And hosted by Wes.
You can listen to Best Case, Worst Case on your favorite listening app. We are on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you listen to podcasts.
Stories about child sexual abuse can make us feel powerless, but the good news is that there are organizations working to prevent abuse and keep kids safe. Darkness to Light and their Stewards of Children prevention training has trained more than 1.4 million adults to protect, recognize, and react responsibly to child sexual abuse.
But there's more work to do, and with their 4 million by 2020 goal, Darkness to Light is setting their sights on training 4 million adults around the country to keep kids safe. By donating to Darkness to Light, you can help reach this goal that will make communities across the country safer places for kids.
It starts with you. Visit www.d2l.org today to give. That's www.d2l.org.